Hello, Shadow Era community. Welcome back to State of the Era, the podcast put out by the A1 Alliance to bring you the best discussion of all things Shadow Era. You are once again hearing the deliciously sexy voice of NinjaDucky. We've got a great show ready for you guys today. We'll be discussing what's going on with Shadow Era's guild scene and the tournament scene, and we'll be digging into a lot of the dynamics between the human and shadow card pools, so it should be a good time. We've got our State of the Era crew back today. Everyone say hello to GreatOldOne, affectionately known as Goo.
Hey, what's up, guys?
We've got iClipse.
Hello, guys.
We've got Otto7.
Hello, everybody.
And our special guest this episode is A1 guild leader Wtzky.
G'day.
So great to have you on, Wtzky. Before we get started, let's introduce you a little bit so everyone knows what you're all about. How long have you been playing Shadow Era? What's your favorite Shadow Era deck of all time? And have you ever done battle with a kangaroo?
Nice.
Well, the kangaroo thing, funny you should mention that. You know, we've all got kangaroos as pets, obviously, so we tend to treat them kindly rather than battling them. But in terms of Shadow Era, I've been playing for over a year now. You know, actually, it's almost the end of March. I think I joined the forums in March of last year, and I was playing for a few months before that. Favorite deck of all time, it would have to be my Frostburn deck, I think, because I quite enjoyed creating it. I quite enjoyed the speed of it, and especially when it first came out, it almost had no losses at all for me in the first month or so. So that was a good deck, and that was quite fun.
Yeah, I remember that deck. That was a crazy deck. It was a lot of fun to play.
To be really fair, I hated it.
Oh, why did you hate it? Tell us how you really feel.
I'm more of the guy that likes the slow control style play, but in 1.29 it was really, and 1.28 it was really not that possible, partly because of the deck that Wtzky shared on the forum.
Yeah. I'm with iClipse here. You know, I hated the person who invented it. I don't know if it was Wtzky. If it is you, you just have a member heading you now.
Okay, great.
So, lots of love for our guild leader in A1.
This is a great start to my first episode.
Yeah.
It really is.
This is a warning. The next guest that we always make everybody welcome here.
Yes. I don't hate you, Wtzky. That's fine, because I wasn't around when the day came out.
Okay, great.
But if he had been...
But if I had been around, maybe.
Yeah, wholly different story. All
so
right.
What was all the hate for the one deck? Was it really, because I mean, eventually we found that quite a lot of people found ways around that deck. And it did sort of, in the tournament scene, it changed to, Yarikaseiken obviously found ways to counter the deck and win using his Mage deck and his Gravebone decks. Was it really as terrible as everyone says, or?
Well, my opinion was, if you go to a tournament, it was really one of the big decks that you have to keep in mind was if your deck won't be able to battle versus an NinjaDucky and win, then it's better not to join the tournament with your deck.
Yeah, I don't think that deck specifically was that bad, but it definitely... It set the scene for the Aladwin and Logan are the only decks you can play meta. That's pretty much true.
Wtzky, I just had to say it was a really it was a very good deck, but yeah, it made the meta very fast, very fast.
It did, but I mean, from my point of view, I saw the meta shifting quite a lot in the tournament scene anyway. Obviously, the quick match scene sort of stays stagnant. And it'll be interesting to me to see how the tournament scene will shift with the current meta and the new cards. In the previous scene, Iladwen and Logan won the first couple of tournaments, and from then on they didn't win any further tournaments as the tournament scene, meta shifted to include different heroes and different, decks that would counter those two specific decks.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, it's true.
Good point.
True.
So I think it'll do the same thing in this tournament. seen in this current meta, and I'd be interested to see, once the current top heroes are established, which I think are starting to be established now, how everyone deals with them and how it shifts.
Well, one of the things that I find interesting about the tournament meta right now is that it doesn't seem like there's any completely ironclad hero. Like, everybody has something you can think of to tech them with. So I think that the meta will just never stop changing. Like, right now, everyone is pretty much all over Eladwin and Lance, but you're starting to see some, like, Ambers come up from time to time because they're a really good anti-mage deck and they do well against Lance, and I think you start to see a lot of that happening, and I think that's just going to keep cycling.
I agree, and that's what I think happened in the last tournament scene, and I agree with you this time around. It seems to be Lance, and it seems to be, Elad that's dominating what people are choosing, and I think most of that's initially based on quick match. For the first few tournaments, everyone has a look at what decks are doing well in quick match and tries to emulate them. But once everyone else figures out how to counter those decks, the meta shifts again.
Exactly. Okay, so right now, what are you guys seeing out there in the tournament scene, in the meta? Is it just Eladwin and Lance all the time, or are you guys seeing different things start to pop up around? What are you guys seeing out there?
I don't play tournaments, so I don't know. I wish I had more time to play, but no idea.
So my experience, I've unfortunately got knocked out of the first round of the last two tournaments that I played in. I brought in the last Crown 5 classes, I brought Elad for my first hero, and I think that was probably a bit too obvious of me because I faced a solo Darklaw, which was played exceptionally well, and without any severed ties, I just stood no chance of beating that. And then in the extremely tough, 3-hero challenge, I played Wtzky, who's recently been showing some excellent form. He of course made the final and narrowly lost to Busty there, and has done really well in our own A1 Siege. But I ended up losing a very tight third match there to a solo Moonstalker, which was a very surprising deck that he pulled out there.
Yeah, that solo Moonstalker is a beast. I haven't really thought of a great answer for it besides just loading your deck up with like 4 severed ties.
How does that kill you?
Basically just mills you to death.
Oh, it's a mid deck? Okay.
It's incredibly powerful at stalling, and he does pack what big teeth, so he sits there doing sort of one or two damage a turn, which is very annoying. It's a very slow and painful death. But I think it is actually quite easy to defeat if you can expect it. I've had to play around with it on one of my alternate accounts, and there are quite a few decks that can do it without changing too much of what they pack. But any deck, really, if they pack enough severed ties and some item destruction, would be able to beat it.
The deck, the lone Moonstalker deck it's not a new deck. I faced it once, I think, at least 6 months ago. And if you think about it, not many of the cards that the solo Moonstalker deck uses were actually changed. But then, back then, all the focus was really on Darklaw because it didn't take any damage. So yeah, I think Moonstalker just got less attention as a solo deck back then.
Yeah, and
it was already viable, actually.
It was
That's
Eladwin that was hitting the hero, so you couldn't play so easily.
Oh yeah, that's true.
If you had, Eladwin burning, you could just not out-heal it with Lone Wolf, which now you can very easily.
Yeah, okay, that's a very good point.
Yeah.
Anyway, what I see in the tournaments right now is I didn't really play any real tournaments yet, except the troll one. But
the troll tournament meta is great, by the way.
Yeah, I just had an awesome Darklaw versus Baduru matchup. Those two guys really were fighting like champs. No, but anyway, the games I did play were in the league of Condorian, and I've only faced, I think, 3 people right now, and I've seen a Boris, a Lance, and a Zaladar. So yeah, actually also
pretty good mix actually.
Yeah, it's a good mix. I'm really happy with the possible mixes right now.
I've also seen quite a few Portal Mage decks. So in the Guild Wars, I also faced Wtzky again, and he brought a very strong Portal Mage. And I have seen quite a few very strong Lancers around just watching some of the other tournaments as well. Caitlin Zero is doing really well in the Full Field Invitational with a very strong Lance, which I actually faced against her, and she kicked my ass when we were practicing too. So there are some very good decks, and it's very diverse at the moment.
Yeah, actually, Portal Magia is one of those decks that perplexes me because I spend a lot of time playing mages, and a long time ago I wrote Portal decks off as, like, inconsistent and not good because they depend so much on that Portal that back when everyone used to be playing tons and tons of things that could kill Portal, it was worthless because you would play like turn 5 Portal and then it would die, and then you'd be like, okay, I just wasted my whole turn and I have nothing to do anymore. But now that everything's shifting towards Leyline Nexus and away from Shriek, and people aren't playing with priests very much, and Stop Thief can't kill Portal anymore, that deck has become good, and it's weird to me.
Yeah, the Portal isn't really that vulnerable anymore, just because of the meta, and because of that, it's usually you can haste 1 or 2 big creatures, big allies with that, and do a ton of damage with 1 Portal actually.
Yeah.
And I mean, even if the allies come through, they attack, and then you still have to deal with that ally, and usually you lose board control because of the hasted allies, and you still have to deal with it, and in the meantime, the mage can just burn you to death.
Portal's always been a favourite card of mine back in 1.4, 1.5, and I really enjoyed using Portal on Nishaven of all mages. And back then, I think the trick was to bring a Portal in on the later turns rather than on turn 4 or 5. So you could haste in quite a few. With my Nishaven, it's always been weenies that could hit really hard. But,
right, like Blake and things.
Yeah, like Blake with Eldon. If you bring a couple of those Blakes in turn 6 or 7, you can really control the game, especially with Nishaven's ability. You clear the board, you play a Portal, and then all of a sudden you've got creatures coming in hasted. So it is a very strong card, and if you use it right, it can really turn the tide.
Yeah, and another thing that I find interesting about the tournament meta right now is I haven't seen, like, any Gravebone whatsoever. What happened? On the test server, it was all Gravebone all the time, and people were like, oh my god, Gravebone breaks everything, he's the new Aladwin. And I've actually got a really good Gravebone deck that I feel really comfortable taking against anything, but as far as what I'm seeing out in the wild, there's just no Gravebone anywhere. Oh, why do you, like, what happened there, do you guys think?
I think people just jumped the bandwagon on the test server. I mean, we saw like Gravebone win 1 or 2 tournaments, and then everyone thought like he's like the best hero in the game because no one actually tried anyone else. And I think close to the end of the test server, I started, playing Aladwin and Mudge, but more Aladwin, and I showed a few people that, I mean, she can kick, Gravebone's ass if she's played right, and people, and I think just suddenly understood he's not that good, and you started using also like heroes they didn't use before, and I don't know.
What I think is that Gravebone is still actually a very good and also tier 1 hero, but right now he just doesn't get the attention he used to.
Yeah, that's
most
kind of
people,
how I feel too.
He's still really, really strong, but I think he's just,
he's out of fashion.
Got over him. Yeah, he's out of fashion.
Out of fashion more. I think it's more out of fashion than being strong. I think Aladwin can perhaps beat Gravebone, but I still think it's an even matchup between those two.
I think it's a matchup. It's either even or Gravebone has the advantage, but I still think that, it's pretty even between all the mages, kind of.
Yeah.
And
except Nishaven. Sorry, Wtzky.
I'd argue that, but
he's okay. But he's not that bad as people think.
No, that's true.
I think that the meta has evolved around Dagger of Unmaking, which was initially one of the best weapons out there. So you see a lot of gargoyles and a lot of sandworms for a lot of time, and that made most of the Gravebones lose their initial board control, because he would just draw a dagger of unmaking and throw your fatty out and just call his fatty inside, and you would only deal with one of the two. You could just destroy with Leila and Nexus or with a item destruction card, or you could just deal with the fatty. And that was pretty much all the secret. Once the meta started evolving around the dagger of unmaking, it pretty much made Greybone very much worse than he used to be, but he's still strong.
I think he'll make a comeback. I think people will. I mean, everyone now plays Eladwin almost, and people will understand that. I mean, there are other strong heroes except Eladwin, and it will balance out eventually.
I also think because in 1.29 a lot of people were playing Eladwin, and then they started 1.5, and they kept playing Eladwin, and they saw it was still a good hero, and that's why they didn't switch to heroes like Greybone.
I think with Gravebone as well, in the PFG, there was quite a few people in that initial PFG, and Gravebone won 2 tournaments. So, everyone started posting on the forums, Gravebone's going to be the new tier 1, and people listened to that. So that's why we initially got the flood of Gravebones. But at the moment, everyone's seeing that pretty much every hero is viable in, some way. It just depends on how you build your deck. And how you play your matches.
I totally agree with that. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And you could see the original Lance decks building around Sandworms, to keep fighting Eladwin. But you now see many Lance decks with Earthen Protector or some Ravens, which was not the initial plan out there. And I would just like to add to the previous question, if it's still on about the tourneys. One of the good tourneys to spot which heroes are used was the one that just ended, the 3 heroes one, where we could see the 3 best choices of practically many people that are in the forums active. And we saw too many lances, and we saw mages, Eladwin, even some Gravebone, and we did see some Banebows. We should mention that Sisyphus deck, which lies in the top of the ranks, was originally a Banebow. I don't think if it was just a Banebow.
I think it was just a
Banebow.
Yeah, it was only a Banebow. So first place now belongs to Banebow, right?
Yeah, that's actually surprising, but you have to remember that tournaments and like quick games are not the same at all.
Yeah, they're not the same, but we've seen Banebows in tournaments also, with good decks.
Also, I think you have to mention the player. The player who plays it is really very important, and Sisyphus is really a very good player.
Yeah, he's really
so that's
good,
why he gets it so high, that Banebow.
He's also very unique. I've never been able to replicate his decks because his play style I just can't replicate really. His decks always run very draw light, and on contrast, my decks always go very draw heavy. So I find it very hard to adjust to his play style.
The thing is also it's how a deck is constructed. I mean, if you run light on draw, that's not a problem if a lot of your cards are very high cost cards, because you only need to draw 1 card, and if you can play only 1 card that turn, it doesn't matter that you have not a lot of draw. I made a deck in the past, the Gwen deck. It was also very low on draw because it had a lot of high cost cards, and if you only have to play 1 card a turn, and sometimes 2 for a turn, you can get away with being light on draw.
That's true.
So it's just a different style. As long as you get through the early game with how your deck is constructed, then I think you're at a good point, even with being light on draw.
Yeah, I agree.
That's very true.
I just wanted to quickly go back on what Otto was saying about the 3 hero challenge. I think he's right. Everyone brought as their first 2 decks a mage and a lance. And then as the 3rd deck, they branched out into, quite a varied hero. So we saw Moonstalkers and Gwen and Banebow. But it was interesting that pretty much everyone bought, and Amber as well. But it was interesting, almost everyone bought as their, deck 1 and deck 2 Lance and a Mage. So I think really they're the 2 sort of dominant hero archetypes that we're seeing in tournaments at the moment.
The fact is also a Lance deck, it can deal with anything, and that's why it's so popular right now.
I agree. So let's dig down a little bit more into the whole human and shadow deck thing. Do you guys have a preference, human or shadow? Do you guys like playing one more than the other?
Yeah, I like human over shadow. I mean, just because I get along with the synergy better, like the human allies synergy. I don't know. Their allies are. I think the human allies are better early game, and shadow allies are better late game.
And you play most rush decks, right?
Yeah, and I like to play like crazy rush decks a lot, so I just like the whole Chris, Puen, and now Priest of the Light or Aldon or Jasmine, whatever. So it's just better for me. And if I lose board control early in any deck, then I feel like I don't know. I feel like I'm out of my synergy, and it's hard for me to play.
I also like the human faction a little bit more. I like both factions actually, but the human a little bit more because I feel like usually they pack a little bit more punch at the start. I don't go always all out rush, so I mean I usually don't play a Charisma in my decks, for example. But if you look at the stable cards, for example, a Jasmine or an Eldon, and you compare it to the Shadow staple card, it's we have an Infernal Gargoyle and a Death Mage. While they're both good, very good allies, but they don't pack a lot of punch. They both have 2 attack, and that's it. So I like to have the 3 attack creature that you boost with Eldon and just take something out. And usually that's not possible with the Gargoyle, even though it stays longer on the field.
See, I actually like the Shadow faction better myself, but it's for basically the inverse reason of what you guys are saying. Their early allies I feel like are not as good as the human ones, but I like to play a lot of longer games, and in those, when you start getting up into like Shadow Knight and Plasma Behemoth and Molten Destroyer, that's just way better than the high cost allies on the human side, I feel like.
Yeah.
I
You
enjoy
should
them
say
more.
that facing a lance, bringing out Aeon and Netherland Protector.
Yeah.
Well,
Very
okay,
powerful.
but
That's
then
supernova.
With
it.
the ultimate combo.
I just
Yeah.
supernova.
but is it more ultimate than having Wrath of the Forest and 2 Shadow Knights?
Out or in the hand?
Oh, 1 in the hand, 1 on the board.
It depends which player you are facing. Because if you play against a player who uses Ankle Breaker or Dagger of Unmaking, you are not pretty much on having the board control there, unless you back a Leyline Lexus in hand. But even if you do,
Well, that's
then
true.
you just lost the board again because it reverses the turn that you. It reverses that who has board control. You know, you lose board control and you have to destroy the weapon. So you
Well,
just
if
give it.
it's a lance, you have a stop. Oh wait, you talk about Shadow Heroes.
Shadow Knight is not going to be. That would be a really good deck, but
Yeah,
Shadow Knight
if you
in
get
lands
lance.
is not going to be happening anytime soon.
Yeah.
I would play it though.
It would be OP, like
Yeah,
insanely.
or you
I
could
mean-
just play some Night Crawlers. Have yourself
Oh.
getting some Molten Destroyers there.
That would be so good. I'm
So
building a new Lance deck now with built around the idea of stealing Molten Destroyers and Shadow Knights.
Okay.
So for me, it would be human as well. You know, just I enjoy the early allies as well. I quite like Priest of the Light and Jasmine and Eldon and I think actually the human allies in general have much better abilities. Apart from Plasma Behemoth, I think Jasmine's ability is probably one of the best abilities, mostly because of the fact that it's so cheap and it can come on so early, and it affords quite good board control in decks. So my preference is also to human, but I do quite enjoy Shadow as well, for the inverse reason in slow, long games, having those hard-hitting allies can really make for a fun game.
Yeah.
But I have a question about Jasmine's ability. Do you guys actually use it a lot? Because I run Jasmine a lot, but the ability of her, I almost never use it.
I depends on what deck. I mean,
Yeah, it depends on the
I
deck.
don't use it a lot as well, but that's why I almost never use it in a deck now. I mean, I don't put Jasmine in a lot of decks, just because I know I won't use it. But if there's a deck, I mean, I know.
It's one of those things where
should-
like I probably have used Jasmine's ability like once in the past 20 games that I've played with a human deck, but it probably like made me not lose the game that one time that I used it. So
Well,
it's kind of weird like that.
You would use it if you are a priest, I guess. You know, if you get a Jasmine out after the tidal wave, you can practically own the board for as much turn as you need to heal back and put some King Sprite out. And maybe in some Lance decks, Jasmine is also cool because you can haste her and keep the board down until you get your ankle breaker.
Yeah, I agree. Lance
Yeah,
and
in
Priest.
Lance she's really good. I think also in quite a lot of mages or even priests where they can clear the board, she's quite good because you don't have to worry so much about what the opponent's board is looking like. You can keep them distracted and pile on some damage on the hero, and then play your supernova and clear the board and start again. I played actually quite an interesting game the other day. I had an Aeon and 2 Jasmine out, and my opponent was a Shadow player who kept bringing out Molten Destroyers and I think it was Molten Destroyers and Brittle Minotaur. And all I did was distracted while, piling on a bit of damage to the hero and, then clear the board and it pretty much won me the game. So I do use her ability quite a lot in my games.
Yeah. I also use it a lot in my Amber deck because I don't have like high cost allies, so it's very useful against the the very
And
expensive
in
allies.
Amber, it's a free distraction, isn't it? Because you've got your Jeweler's Dream giving you an extra 2.
Yeah, it's really good. I mean, on Amber, I think.
Yeah, but the thing I was thinking was, in my decks, I usually don't use the ability a lot. So I was thinking that if we would have an ally with 3 attack and 4 health, but that had passive ability, something like Eldon, but something else then, that would be a better ally than Jasmine.
Maybe. Yeah, I think it depends on what deck.
But it was a thought. It was not something I was certain about, so I wanted to bring it
I
up.
actually agree with that. I think that if there was some other thing that was like it happens when you come into play or it's just a passive ability that stays on the board, I would play that over Jasmine virtually every time because Jasmine either dies instantly because she's such a big threat or you need to do other things and don't have resources for her ability is what I
Really?
find in my decks
So,
anyway.
Yeah,
If you had Bad Wolf in an human deck, would you put it over Jasmine?
But
No,
Bad
I-
Wolf
That's what you say. You say if you had like a passive ability, right?
No, I wouldn't
Well,
put a Bad Wolf in a good one.
I wouldn't put. Well, here's the difference. Here's the thing. I wouldn't put a Bad Wolf in instead of Jasmine, but if Jasmine was replaced magically by Bad Wolf, it wouldn't affect how I play my decks at all.
Yeah, true.
I don't know.
Yeah.
So I think it would affect
some decks.
my decks quite a bit. Jasmine, especially hidden behind, Protector, it just affords so much, time to. A lot of my decks rely on doing damage to the hero and ignoring what happens on the other person's board. So just being able to use that extra distraction, especially if she's hidden so she can't be taken out in one hit, it can give you a lot of space between your hero's health and your opponent's hero's health. And especially in a mage deck where you can combo a couple of novas together and, do 10 damage from 2 novas at 1 or 2 turns, that can be a really powerful play.
It depends on the hero that you're using, right? Jasmine is
That's true.
great in some decks, in some heroes and archetypes, and she's not so good compared to Priest of the Light or Aldon in some other decks, and probably some other heroes.
But personally, I think she's probably the best ally for 3 resources, with a very close second being Priest of the Light.
Oh man, I was gonna say I think Priest of the Light is better. Let's talk about this. Priest of the Light, is he the best human 3-drop? Some people say yes, some people say no. What do you guys think?
I don't think there is any one one ally in 3cc that is the best. I think it's very, very situational, very depends on the deck. I mean,
I also want to clarify, I may have worded that badly. Not necessarily the best turn 3 drop, but the best 3 cost ally. Because what I think about that actually changes depending on that.
Yeah, of course. I still stay with my statement. There isn't anyone who's best.
I would actually think that, like I said, it's a very close between Priest of the Light and between Yaz. Priest of the Light, his ability to, dictate who gets to use their shadow ability first is very powerful, and the heal as well can be, life-saving in very tight matches. So just having 1 or 2 extra health at the end of the game can really make a world of difference. And the fact is, if you combo a couple of priests together, you get to use your shadow ability maybe 2 more times than your opponent in an average match. So I think he is extremely strong and retains his strength throughout the late game. But on the same hand, so does a Yaz. So it's really close between the two for me.
Well, for me, the reason why I asked if Jasmine was a good ability was because I never used her ability. So now I'm using a Lance deck, and so I found that I never used the Jasmine's ability. So I just completely threw it out of my deck, and I put in 4 Priests of the Light as my main 3cc drop. And I found that the deck is actually working a lot better, even when going second.
Yeah, I play 4 Priests of the Light in my Lance deck as well. I would just put it this way about the 3 resource allies. In the current meta and in the percentage that most decks are made and most heroes are used, I would say that Priest of the Light is the most popular one. It may change once the meta evolves, which happens every minute. And you may find something else as a better drop at 3 resources. But right now, in the current meta, with Lance being used too much and Eladwin as well, I would say that Priest of the Light is the most popular. I don't know if he's better, but he's the most popular.
I actually think Eldon is still the best 3 card drop. It just occurred to me that all these cards really do rely on Eldon quite a lot. Priest of the Light, if you drop him down, you really want an Eldon behind so he can do the 4 damage to help to clear the other 3 drops. Same with a Yasmin. And I can't remember ever seeing a human deck that didn't run Eldon.
That's actually a really good point. People discuss Jasmine versus Priest of the Light all the time, but no one ever considers running Jasmine and Priest of the Light and ditching Aldon, ever.
Well, I did. In my Eladwin deck, I had 4 Priests of the Light and no other 3-drop at all. But at all. I mean, that's it. But recently, really recently, like in the last few days, I decided to change it. And instead of 4 Priests of the Light, I put 2 Priests of the Light and 2 Aldons. And it works better, I think.
The problem with...
it really depends.
The problem with Aldon, except for being unique, which is not such a big problem, is that he cannot kill Puen when he gets attacked, which is very common. I mean, if you get to play first and you get to put down a 3 resource ally, you wouldn't like it to be Aldon. So when you make your deck, if you put 4 Aldons in your deck, apart from the fact that you may draw 2 consecutive ones and have your draw being a dead draw by Aldon being unique, you wouldn't like at turn 3 put Aldon down against Puen because you're not going to kill him on defense.
Yeah, I agree completely with Otto. It's very often that I don't like to put down an Eldon on turn 3, especially when going first or second, actually. It doesn't matter. If I have another 3 CC drop, I will play it instead of Eldon because of the 2 retaliation damage is really... a lot of allies survive because of Eldon only does 2 damage on the opponent's turn.
I always play another 3-drop if I have it, and play Aldon on turn 4, but that's not so much because of the retaliation damage for me. It's because if I play Jasmine and then Aldon, or Priest of Light and then Aldon on turn 4, I can be attacking with something that has 4 damage instead of 3, which is like all the difference in the world, especially early game.
Yeah.
Yeah,
me
but
too.
what happens if Puen hits your Aldon and the opponent plays I don't know, another Jasmine or another Aldon as well? You know, he gets to use his ability first because he plays second, and he still has two allies on the battlefield, while you only have one which is damaged and is going to die in the next turn. You know, that's a big problem. I think that's the main reason why Keldor was less seen than in the very first versions of the game, and he lost his popularity to Gargoyle or even Medusil Bad Wolf.
Yeah, good point.
Yeah.
Actually, I was wondering, does any of you guys have an idea why Medusa isn't used that much? I mean, it's a 3 CC drop with 3 attack, 4 hit points, and the ability it has is actually quite useful as well.
I think people just like Gargoyle much more because it's harder to kill, and no one really uses more than. I mean, and also DMT because he does like the 1 damage when he comes into play.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think no one wants to put like Medusa over any of them, and you don't need
Well-
more than like 7 or 8 3 CC allies in a deck.
But a thought I was having today was, what if you have 4 Medusils in a deck and 3 or 4 times that mage, and you use that mage actually like an Alden to do the extra 1 point of damage to kill a 4 health ally on turn 4, just like
Yeah,
Alden does with Jasmine. Wouldn't that
that
be a
is-
solid play?
Yeah,
But it's just
It
great
would,
if you
yep.
just get to play first, I think.
Yeah, okay, but does the same for a Jasmine and Eldon when you're a human,
Yeah, that's
Ah.
true.
and it's still used a lot. So
Well, I think
Yeah,
that
that's-
the reason, like for me personally, I take Death Mage and Gargoyle over Medusil, and if I go with some kind of crazy heavy 3-drop deck, my Banebow actually plays 2 Medusil because I ran out of spaces for like I can't play more than 4 Gargoyles. But for me, the trick is that those first early turns are so pivotal. If I'm going second and I drop a turn 3 Gargoyle as opposed to a turn 3 Medusil, that Gargoyle will survive if Jasmine gets pumped by Aldon and comes at me with 4 attack. My Gargoyle is not dead, and in fact, he'll turn around and kill Jasmine back on the next turn. Whereas if I drop a Medusil and that same thing happens, then my Medusil is just dead, and now my opponent has 2 allies and I have none, and I'm screwed.
yeah, that's true. I agree.
But at the same time, on the offensive, your Gargoyle and Death Mage aren't going to be clearing the board of the Aldon and the Yasmin that are there. So even if you do drop him as an opponent, I would probably just ignore the Gargoyle with my pumped up Yasmin and just go straight for the hero, knowing that you couldn't, destroy either of the 2 cards on your next turn.
Well, it depends unless you play Banebow or Mage or I don't know any
It
hero.
also-
Well,
like
yeah.
Yeah.
True, if you have
Also,
other cards.
yeah, this is another thing that comes into what hero are you playing?
Yeah.
Yeah, my style is like the Gargoyle actually usually does kill Jasmine on my next turn, but in thinking about it, it's because I'm always playing mages or Banebow. So it's like turn 4 is Lightning Strike plus Gargoyle attack, or Banebow's ability plus a Gargoyle attack, which does kill pretty much everything.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
true.
Yeah, it's not only that, it's that Brutalis is much more popular than he used to be. You know, he's the main 4 copies 2-drop ally in most of the decks right now. Because you can play allies that will live to see another day. You know, you play 10-2 Brutalis, 10-3 Gargoyle, so you just know that you are going to have something out to at least kill Puen. And if you
Right.
pack a deathmatch, then your opponent's pretty much screwed out there.
can we say that going for a Medusil and a Death Mage as turn 4 drop, that is more of an offensive kind of play?
Yeah.
While it's less defensive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
it is.
Yeah. I think another reason why you don't see that as much is because if you're going, like, that's a very rush sort of strat where, like a Ladwin style, right, you're going to spill your allies out on the board and you're going to attack as hard as you can. But if that's the strategy you're going for, I think you're better off with a human hero because, it's
Yes.
like Medusil and Deathmage Thaddeus can produce that same effect of killing that turn 3 ally on turn 4. But then after that, Aldon will just pump everybody and everyone you play subsequently as long as your opponent doesn't deal with him. So you get way more damage out of Aldon and Jasmine or Priest of the Light than you do out of Death Mage and Medusa.
Yeah, that's true. Can I? I'll make a comment and then I want to ask a question of everyone. So the comment I have is that Bad Wolf in the past, I think, used to be more popular than Medusa because he survived. So in the Burn and Rush era of 1.29, a Bad Wolf had a better chance than a Medusa to hang around. Whereas in this era at the moment, Medusa's ability is more useful than Bad Wolf to help deal with the fatties that are coming out. But if you guys could only pick one 3-cost ally out of Shadow or Human, and all your other allies had to be 2-cost or 4-cost or 5-cost or whatever, which 3-cost ally would you pick and why? And I would answer that with Eldon because his ability actually, is universally good throughout the whole game. Whereas a Yaz or Priest of the Light, which would probably be a second choice, have some situational plays.
I would choose Aldon as well, just on the same reasons. Anyone thinks otherwise?
I think I would go with a Jasmine. If I had only one choice?
One.
I mean, I like Priest of the Light, but he isn't as good in all decks. I mean, he's my favorite 3CC ally right now, but that's because of the decks I play. But if I have to choose one ally for all the decks, I think I would go with the Jasmine because it's really good for in all the human decks, and it helps with controlling the board. Yes, okay, it generates less damage than an Alden, but it helps controlling the board better than an Alden. So I would go for Jasmine.
I honestly think I might go for Priest of the Light because I don't like him. I mean, I've said again and again and again on the show and on the forums that I don't like Priest of the Light early unless I have no other choice. But outside of that, like, turn 3, turn 4 window, and even, I guess, on turn 4, it's not bad. He's going to impact my game more than anything else that I play. Like, even Jasmine, just, like, she really does just die. And maybe it's part of my strategy and the way that I play too, because I find I don't ever use her to distract things because I'm just killing them instead. So I'd much rather deny my opponent their shadow ability by taking, like, at a crucial time when when their whole game plan rests on, okay, next turn I'm going to use my shadow ability, and I'm like, nope. Like, that wins so many games that I don't think I can give that up for anything.
So, if I got it right, we just had NinjaDucky saying that he didn't like Priest of the Light in the forums and now he likes it, and iClipse said he uses Jasmine's ability one of 20 games and he still likes her most out of...
Okay, I just want to clear this up once and for all time. I've never hated Priest of the Light. I don't know why everyone thinks this. I don't like him as an early drop. I think turn 3 Priest of the Light in most matchups is not very good. But later, he's amazing and probably the best 3. Like, in fact, I'm going on record right now and saying that in the late game, he's better than, like, pretty much anything except for maybe a situational Aldon where you already have 3 or 4 allies out and then you drop Aldon down and immediately get, like, 4 damage out of it. But aside from that, I'd rather have Priest of the Light every time.
I want to add that the reason I would choose Aldon is also because, I mean, if you can use only one ally, you have to choose only one. Then in a shadow deck, Aldon would probably be the best.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, synergize with everyone else.
With Priest of the Light and early drops, I actually disagree. I think, if you're going first, if you think about it, going first, you've got the disadvantage on when you get to use your shadow ability, which really can turn the tide. So, let's say you're a mage player, you don't get to use your shadow ability until turn 5 normally if you're going first. Having a Priest of the Light in your deck not only means you get that turn 3 drop first, so you get a shot at the board, and with a turn 3 Priest of the Light and a turn 4 Eldon, you've really got a really great board control right there. But the other point is that you actually still get to use your shadow ability first. So a lot of players rely on, when they're building their decks going second, being able to use their shadow ability, to gain back the board. So when I build my decks, I often think, okay, if I'm going second, I know I've lost the board at this stage, but I'm going to use this combination with my shadow ability to get it back. And Priest of the Light, if you drop him on turn 3 as a first player, you've really exerted a lot of control. You've got the board in your favor. You've got your first use of your shadow ability, and you've got an extra health if the game gets really close. So I actually disagree. I think as a first turn play, Priest of the Light is really a really strong, turn 3 drop.
But then what do you do when you drop Priest of the Light and then I Lightning Strike Priest of the Light and your Puin?
But the point is, when you Lightning Strike, you're still using up your turn 4 completely. So, you can Lightning Strike my Priest of the Light and the Puin, but I've still got my turn 4 Eldon down on the board. And I've still got my first use of my Shadow energy. So if you drop anything on turn 5, I've got my Shadow ability and my Eldon to destroy it. So I really think he is probably the strongest turn 3 play in the game currently.
Yes, but the point is that I think that what NinjaDucky says is that you Lightning Strike when you have allies out, because if you manage to play second, and to have Puin and Priest of the Light, and still you got the board, then you are probably playing with a very, very bad opponent, right?
You wouldn't have the board going second. I mean, if you're going second and someone drops a Priest of the Light, I can't see any way that you could gain control of the board in that situation. So, if I'm going first, I'll play a Puin, Priest of the Light, and Eldon. I don't think there's many ways really to clearly get the board back by turn 4 without your Shadow ability, and Priest of the Light takes that away from you.
Yeah, I agree with Wtzky. It's very often that what you do in the very early turns is just to make sure your hero doesn't take too much damage, so that you can take the board back at turn 6 or even 7, when the extra card that you have, from the moment that plays a role, you have that extra card to take back the board. Usually it's not on turn 3 or turn 2 or turn 3.
Okay, well let's talk about this, because this I think where we're disagreeing is a matter of human shadow dynamics. Dun dun dun, the topic. So let's say that I'm playing human versus human, right? So you're going first, you play Puin, and then I play Puin, and our Puins just ignore each other because that's what they do. And then you play Priest of the Light, you set back my shadow ability, that blows. I play any given turn 3 ally, it doesn't even matter. Turn 4, you drop Aldon and you just smoke me. Right?
No, that's not true.
That's right. Yeah.
If I go second and you ignore my Puin and you drop a Priest of the Light, and then on my turn I drop an Alden, I just take out your Priest of the Light and I have the board. Even if you play an Alden turn after, then you have 3 attack allies, and you can take out my Puin, but we're still even on the board then.
The point there is you don't have the board because now the first player gets his Shadow ability first as well. So because of that one Priest of the Light.
But okay, so now what happens when you're facing a Shadow player? So you play Puin, I play Brute, and they ignore each other because that's what they do. And then you play Priest of the Light. Oh crap, Magia has to wait an extra turn before she uses her power, or whatever. Then I play Gargoyle. Now you suddenly have a very different situation, because you don't get to just wipe my board simply because you play an Aldon. In fact, you can't kill either of my allies without double attacking them. And
unless
the
your
next
attack Brute. On turn 2. You said they ignore each other. If the Puin attacks that Brute, then you can actually try to clear the board a little bit.
Well, okay, so the Puin attacks the Brute, and then the Brute deals a damage or whatever, and then on the next turn, I drop Death Mage Thaddeus. That's my 3-drop, and then the Brute kills your Puin. That's worse for you.
So
it's not. Then I play an Eldon turn 4, and your Death Mage is gone, and then I've got an Eldon and a Priest of the Light.
Yeah, but there's another
you know
question.
What I mean?
That's okay. Now it's gonna get too far into the realm of theorycrafting.
Yeah.
Now I'm thinking like, okay, yeah, but now it's my turn again, and now my Shadow ability's up, so I'm gonna kill your Priest of the Light. It's gonna get crazy.
But your Shadow ability is not up because of Priest of the Light coming in.
No, it would be, because now we're on turn 5.
Are we on turn 5? Turn 4.
Well,
Played an Eldon. So now it's yours.
Oh, yeah. I guess it depends on who my hero is.
The initial question that what would we pick if we just had one choice?
Yeah.
You know,
That's how we got here.
because I hear Gargoyle and Deathmites and Aldon or Priest of the Light and Jasmine. You know, what happened to the one choice? You know, if you get to pick one.
That's just an interesting, theoretical question, and it was interesting for me. No one went for any of the shadow allies, so I think everyone's agreed.
I would take Gargoyle.
You'd take Gargoyle over an Eldon?
Yeah.
Okay.
I guess it's kind of a valid choice.
We don't know what to say to you. Go away.
I don't know what to say to that. No. Well, I mean, Gargoyle for me is a really good defensive play, but there's so many ways to get rid of him, and now that Banebow's ability isn't reduced by the stone skin, and Elad can freeze, and there's the popularity of clinging webs and net trap, and I just think that having the passive ability of Eldon or the passive ability of Priest of the Light is just too strong to ignore.
So we are all happily seeing that Kyle made some good choices, and we had different opinions about that, right?
Yeah, I think that's a
very
good
true.
thing.
I also think it's interesting. I think it tells something about the player, like which 3-drops you would take. Like I can tell that Otto is more about early game control. He wants to own that board as early as possible and keep it and never let it go, because that's what a gargoyle is for. Whereas I'm thinking when he's telling me he'd keep a gargoyle, I'm like, yeah, but after like turn 6, he's basically worthless and you're just sacking him all the time.
Again, it depends on the players that you have, on the heroes that you use, because normally, if you are a shadow player and in turn 5 you prefer to throw out a 3 resource ally and a 2 resource ally, and at turn 6 2 3 resource allies instead of a Molten Destroyer or a Brutal Minotaur or even a recycling of Shadow Knights, then something is clearly wrong. While the human players would pretty much like throwing out 2 3 resource allies instead of, I don't know, maybe a Sandworm or even a Raven. It depends on who you are facing. But
and don't forget the turn 5 combination of Retreat and 3-cost ally for the humans, which is still one of the strongest combinations that you can play on turn 5.
Yeah, yes.
Especially going second.
Yes, yeah. But that's why as a shadow you get very strong allies. Maybe all of our answers were based on what you will use on the next turns. When I said Gargoyle, I had my shadow allies in mind, and probably you also had your human allies in mind when you picked Aldon or Priest of the Light instead of Jasmine, etc.
I would play Priest of the Light over Gargoyle in my shadow decks too.
I would play Aldon over Gargoyle in my shadow decks as well.
Yeah, so would I.
Okay.
So, yeah.
And I would play Ankle Breaker instead of Dagger of Unmaking, instead of Old Iron Dagger in all of my decks.
Yeah, I guess if I could play Dark Claw with Ankle Breaker, I would do it too. I guess at some point this exercise breaks down. Speed Strike plus Ankle Breaker coming to a game near you.
I think we should ask Wtzky our questions, right?
Yeah.
We didn't ask him yet.
Oh, that's
true.
Are
these the embarrassing questions, are they?
Oh, no,
we mentioned at the beginning of the episode that we were going to talk about guilds, and we haven't gotten to that yet, and we've been going for an hour. So, let's go ahead and get on to the final topic of guilds. This is really good discussion, though. Maybe we'll come back to it in a later episode. But let's talk about the guild scene in Shadow Era for a little bit here. What do you guys think about Shadow Era's guild scene right now? Do you think that it's better than it was before? Because I do. And just what are you guys' impressions, and do you enjoy it and whatever?
Well, there's no question that it's better. We've got more guilds popping up. We've got a lot of guilds coming in for newer players, and we've got guilds that are focusing on tournaments and helping the community, and there's a good diverse group out there. There's something for everyone. If you're just a casual player, there's a few guilds just aimed at the casual player, and it's definitely better. I mean, when I first joined A1, really there was only A1 and Marksman, as the most active guilds. I think just soon after that, Team Juggernauts came in and they started making a push, for being a very strong guild as well. So there's no doubt that it's better. And from even just, a few months ago, the scene just keeps improving.
Yeah, I agree with that. I also like the fact that there are a lot more guilds right now, but I still think that we could do it a little bit more so people have more options to choose from. Right now we have only, I think, 2 guilds that are directed at newer players. We have our A1 Acolytes, and then we have, I think, Shining Stars is also a bit directed at newer players.
Oh, and ASF as well?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
We've got
Okay.
ASF.
ASF, part of ETC.
Yeah.
I still think that we could have a little bit more guilds, but at the same time that would mean that we need more players as well. Right now, most of the players that are on the forums, they have a guild. I think.
Yeah.
I think
So
most
pretty
one.
much, yeah.
I think.
Yeah,
All
but
the most active people, anyway.
it's mostly the other way around. It's not that the most players in the forum have guilds. It's most like that the guilds have tried and collected and recruited everyone that seems to be active in the forums, which is a very different meaning. It's not that everyone who was active just made a guild or was recruited in a guild. It is that guilds number increased and guilds try to be competitive and try to offer to the community, everyone with its role, and they try to recruit guys who seem to have interest for the game, which is pretty nice.
Yeah, okay. But would it be better? What would be the best scenario for guilds to recruit players or for players to go seeking guilds?
That's hard to answer, really, because, guilds have their own dynamics, and a lot of the time you want to try to keep that dynamic. So you need players that will fit with your guild as well. And that's one of the reasons that, in A1 we like to, invite players to join us, because we want players that can fit with our group, and we are a tight-knit group. And we want players that we know that will work with everyone else and will contribute to the discussion on our own private forums. So it's a pretty tough question to answer there.
I think that right now what happens is that there's sort of a mixture of both. I think sometimes there are people that get out there and go, hey, you know what, I don't have a guild, that seems really cool, and then they start looking at the list of active guilds and asking questions and start to ask guild leaders about trying out for their guilds. And then sometimes people just catch a guild leader's eye and they go, hey, you know what, this person would be really good in our guild, and then they try to recruit them. So I think there's kind of both going on right now, and I think that's a good dynamic to have, because it seems like all the guilds are filling out nicely with people that go well together.
It was always happening simultaneously. Guilds, when they are not full of members, they just try to seek out good recruits. And once they have picked a critical number, they just have a little less interest. So it's that more spots are filled and less players are recruited. So the interest from the player side is launched to higher levels. And that's about when new guilds start to show up. When I entered Alliance 1, the guild was pretty full of old members who, for different reasons, had to stop. So we just picked new guys who were good fits for the guild. And when we saw that the game is evolving and too many players are around that can help both us and the community, we just made our acolytes, who are towards newer members, to help them and be helped.
Yeah, okay.
Very true.
Yeah.
I personally really enjoy the dynamic that all the guilds have right now in the game. I think it's fantastic. Like when you go to like a tournament, or that one of your teammates is in a really big match for an event, like a finals in a tournament or something like that, you go and watch those matches and spectate them, and you always see people from like both persons' teams cheering on the match and observing and participating in that way. And I think that's really cool. I really enjoy that that's a part of Shadow Era.
Yeah,
I agree.
I like it.
Yeah, I agree completely.
All right, so Wtzky, since we have you here and you are our esteemed commander-in-chief, I would like to ask you, what is it like to run a guild? Are there things that you love about it? Are there things that you hate about it? Tell us how you really feel.
All right. there are plenty of things I don't like about it. Obviously there's a lot of times you have to be maybe more diplomatic than you'd like to be, or you have to deal with things that you didn't think you'd have to deal with. I didn't realize it would be this hard actually when I first signed on.
Because you at the start you said you already ran a few guilds in the past.
I did, but to be honest, the guilds that I ran in the past were for games that didn't have such a strong forum, community forum, and a lot of those guilds were quite easy to run because most of it was trying to set up players to, go into competitions and to enter, to find the best players to pay for and enter competitions. So the guilds I ran in the past, there was one for Team Fortress Classic in Counter-Strike, and I actually started a guild up back then, and we got to the Australasian. There was an Australasian ladder, and we got to number 3 on that. But that was a competitive guild more than anything. We didn't have any. The difference right now is that there's a lot more helping the community and running tournaments and all of that side of things of A1, which is the part that I'm finding more difficult. With previous guilds, a lot of it was, tournaments. These are the tournaments that are on. Organize your players, organize for practice matches, and turn up and win. So I actually quite enjoy the Shadow Era guild scene more because there is a lot more organising new tournaments and trying to help the community and writing articles and all of that side of it. So this is definitely a new experience compared to running previous guilds, and it's definitely harder because of that. Running a guild in Shadow Era, it takes a lot of time as well. You've got to be able to keep an eye on the Shadow Era forums and your own forums. So it's no good if I only log on once a week and then I miss everything that's happening and I can't make comments and that sort of thing and help out. So I think what it takes to run a guild, you need a bit of time and quite a lot of patience.
Yeah, because sometimes I wonder how you do it, because you have a job that takes a lot of your time, but you have also a guild that also takes a lot of your time. So is it hard to combine sometimes?
Tapper Talk helps a lot.
Yeah, okay.
Tell me about it.
I end up checking a lot of the forums. I end up checking just through Tapper Talk, while I'm maybe walking to walk, or sometimes when I have a quick break, or I've even checked it once when I was in the room with a patient, just because there was nothing else to do, really.
That's amazing.
Okay, it's like watching myself. Okay, it's the same thing here. But
Wow.
The
patient probably thought that you were checking his chart or something.
Yeah,
you were
probably.
checking the forums.
Are there things that we do that drive you nuts?
I'm sure there is.
There's plenty of things that you guys do that drive me nuts.
All right, we'll
There's,
just leave it at that if you prefer. Yes, I do hate you guys.
No, I don't hate you guys specifically. No, look, it's
Yes,
hard because everyone's got their own personalities, and when people weigh in without waiting to, hear what the rest of the guild thinks or something like that. So that's a personal annoyance of mine.
Trying to keep everybody on the same page.
Yeah, that's right. Or trying to keep people, I need to be a bit more political, I guess, than some other people.
Mm.
So that's hard to try to keep everyone on the same page there.
Well, I think you're doing a fantastic job at that so far, being political or diplomatic.
Thank you.
Me too.
Oh, okay, I have to agree too.
But,
because all the other guys agreed, so I would look bad. No, just joking.
You have to agree. It's funny because in real life I'm maybe not that diplomatic. Even in my patient contact at work, I'm probably not as diplomatic, but it's really just part of running it and making sure everyone's happy as a community together.
Yeah, totally. All right, we're starting to get a little short on time here, so let's close with one more thing that I'd like to talk about. What's your guys' favorite thing about A1, about your own guild?
For me, it's the fact that I come on IRC and always there is someone online. Not always someone to play with or someone to talk with, but there's always someone online. And I think in about 75% of the times I say hi, there is at least one person who says hi back, and of which who I can play a game with to test a new deck to make sure that I have a good matchup. So if I want to practice versus a certain hero, there is always someone there to do that with me. So that's for me the most important and the most favorite thing about my guild.
I like the different people. I mean, like different personalities and different like ages, group ages, and I mean jobs that everyone comes from. Because I used to be in a lot of guilds, and usually it's around like the same age, everyone, and everyone's I don't know from the same place, and nothing is like really interesting. And now suddenly you have like doctors and engineers and stuff, and like it's really nice to be in a place where you can hear a lot of different opinions about everything, and a lot of experienced people. It's I don't know, just love to talk to everyone.
On my side, I haven't been to other guilds before. In fact, I've never played another TCG game before, or anything in the internet in any guild style. Probably, just some video games or PC games, but not in a guild style. What I like most about A1 is that we are a family. It's not like people who cooperate and they just make some jokes. I really feel that it is nice belonging there, and I can feel the rest of the guys like my brothers. I want them to go well on their games and like that. I will give one example because I just don't want to be too flattery here. When Sisyphus reached rank 1 and rate 1, and also when Basti reached before Sisyphus rate 1, they both posted their decks, which is something that most people wouldn't do or wouldn't expect from someone who is up there to do. And what happened is more guys from Alliance 1 copied their decks, and they went to top 20. And I'm not embarrassed to say that I used the Sisyphus Bane of quite a lot of my games to climb up there. And it is something that you expect from people who care to do. You see that once you see that someone shares something so important with you, you have no other choice but to share something with him. And that makes really something more than just being a team who wants to beat other teams and cooperate, if you know what I mean.
Yeah,
I do.
Yeah,
and
totally.
Otto, I'll put my diplomatic hat on as well. Don't forget our sisters as well. We have females in our guild too now.
Okay. Okay. I would like it to have, on her shotgun, my face.
Yeah, Caitlin and Chaos Mistress, they're going to come kick your ass.
They will find you. Yes.
They'll find you and they'll get you.
Yeah.
I agree with Otto. I think it is a big family, and we have a lot of fun on our forums as well. I don't think there's any topics that stay very serious on our forums, and everyone's having fun and looking out for each other, and it just makes it much more. I guess it's just the game itself would have lost interest for me without A1. I often, sometimes I log on just to check the forums, and I don't even maybe play a game, Shadow Era on that day, but I do have a good feeling about, coming onto the forums and seeing what people have posted and joining in.
Yeah, I agree. For me too, that the camaraderie in the guild is crazy compared to any other guild I've ever been in or any other gaming group. I actually know I would have quit the game because I was about to quit the game when A1 invited me to join them, and I was like, oh, hey, it can't hurt. The game's pretty much annoying. Like, I'm just bored of it now anyway. I might have not even ever seen 1.5, but I enjoyed hanging out with the people in the guild and playing games with them so much that I just stayed around and never left, and I'm really, really glad about that.
So that's one of the bad things about A1.
Yes, you're stuck with me now. Sorry, Otto.
I think it's also possible to say that people who are in a guild in general, also the Team Juggernauts guys, it's much more likely that if you're in a guild to stay way longer in the game as well.
That's very true.
I think every guild helps you
Yeah,
stay.
I mean, I also lost interest in the game a time ago, but then I started playing the leagues and starting to playing with other people. And then I joined the guild, and then the game got my interest back. And the people, especially, it's usually the community that you go back to, and not the game itself.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's my opinion. I think
All right.
that would be the same for other guilds then as well. Don't forget our brothers and sisters in Team Juggernauts who probably feel the same way.
Yeah, and etc.
and in all the other
everyone.
guilds.
Yeah, all the other
Yeah,
guilds.
okay. I mentioned just the biggest one, but okay, everyone
Yeah.
actually. Yeah.
And I've got to say, I'm looking forward. I quite like the sound of that Twain tournament that SolarWind's running. I think we need a few more things where we've got a few more relationships built between guilds. And I actually have a lot of friends in other guilds that I'd like to play more games with. So it's a good idea, and I'd look forward to that one.
Yeah, absolutely.
I agree.
All right, well, that is about all the time we have for this episode. Good discussion, guys. Thanks, everybody, for coming on. And you guys in the Shadow Era community, let's keep this guild discussion going because I think it's good. What do you guys like about your guild? Are you in a guild? Talk about that stuff in this thread. I think it'll be a lot of fun. But for now...
A specific question? I would like to have a specific question from episode 2, like we had about Leyline Nexus.
Like
in the first
Leyline
one.
Nexus?
Yeah. I would like you to put it in a question style.
I would like Rob. I would like
your
Rob.
favorite 3CC ally.
Yeah. Rob's question was
Okay.
good.
Oh. Okay.
No, the
Okay.
one favorite 3CC ally if you could only have one for all factions, right? For both factions.
All
That's
right,
good.
so let's keep the discussion going in the thread. Let's go back to that question that we asked earlier. If you could only have one 3CC ally in the game, which one would you keep? We got a lot of interesting responses here, and I'm interested to see what the rest of you guys think out there. So post in the thread and let us know what you think. Let's get some discussion going. Until next time, this is the A1 Alliance signing out.
See you later.